Hey, it's me again. I got a good rest after the subathon. Um, Not quite as screwed over this time, but people did want me to still review the other factions, even though the timer ran out, and I got like way too tired to keep going. So up next we have Nilfgaard, and same scale, hopefully a little more clear-headed, or maybe not, depending on what you want out of this video. But yeah. Let's get to it. Oh shit, that's a notification. Yo, Beowulf, thank you for the Twitch Prime. Much appreciated. Welcome to the clown pile. Yeah. Okay. So now let's go for real. Yeah. All right. So starting it off with Art Fey and Light Cavalry, a card that you would never really have a reason to play ever. It's pretty much just worse than Knight Errant and Shoop, which is already struggling to make it in Shoop, but is sometimes played. I give it a 1. Card's kind of hopeless. Knight Errant, I would give a 2-star. You can play it in Shoop. It's not amazing in Shoop. It kind of competes with the poison cards, which are generally better in Shoop. But it's not a totally hopeless card. You can play it. I'd give it 2 stars. Used to be a lot better, but it's gotten crept by a lot of other bronzes. The other bronzes used to totally suck, whereas this was always what it was, but, Slave Driver has gotten crept harder than Knight Errant. It's gotten crept to the point where you, wouldn't even play it in, a Vadier list most of the time. I think it's a safe 1-star. So, get that out of there. We've got the new Van Morlehem Hunter. I'm not sure whether this is a 4 or a 5-star. The card is an Aristocrat, which is pretty huge if you want to play Masquerade Ball. Masquerade Ball, leading into the expansion, was really impactful. Just because there's, so much raw power in that scenario. But unlike a lot of the other scenarios, it's much more difficult to combo. If you want to combo it with your leader, you have to play Emir. And playing Emir is a lot clunkier than something like just playing Pincer Maneuver, or playing Dana, or whatever other shenanigans you're gonna do, like Radius, Gamatel TA, things like that. So because of that, Masquerade Ball is not the most amazing scenario, but it's still very playable, and the card is also standalone pretty good. You're gonna run it in every Shoop list, so it's at least a 4-star card. I would probably say it's just a 4-star card. It's not a particularly amazing Nilfgaard card, but it's a nice support tool in pretty much every deck. This Assimilate card, I would give 2 stars. You run it sometimes in Assimilate to have backup portals so that you don't get modded. However, I've personally found that it's better to just get modded and either play Portal with just Ducal Guards, or don't play Portal. I think are the 2 better options than having to run this shittier Assimilate engine just to play Portal. It's not that hard to play around Modda. You run other 4s, worst case, if it comes down to getting modded. But a lot of times with Assimilate, you want to commit Portal round 1 anyway. Or just lead with it when you have a 10-card hand, which happens very often. So I don't really like this card. I give it 2 stars because it has been played, but really probably shouldn't be. Recruit, playable in Shoop. Not playable-ish in a soldier deck, although soldier decks aren't really a thing. It's probably a 3-star card. It's mediocre, but it does the job. Master of Disguise is quite a bit better as a result of Collar, I would say, in Shoop decks. I kind of like Collar in Shoop personally. I think I like Collar the most out of the TAs. And I mean, even if you're not running Collar, you're running Collar in the form of Radia. So because of that, Master of Disguise is pretty good. But is pretty much just worse than Magni Division in every way. And kind of requires some specific cards. I think I'd also give it 3 stars, but maybe it's only a 2-star. It's definitely like, I don't know. I'm feeling generous, so I'll give it 3. There are like a lot of offbeat Nilfgaard decks that have like more locks, and like playing a card like this is definitely solid in those. Magni Division. Magni Division's like better Master of Disguise. It's one of the first bronzes I would put in most Nilfgaards. Especially helps with proactivity. It's just something a lot of Nilfgaard lists can struggle with. And it's like, sometimes you want to completely cut engines from Nilfgaard just so that they don't like trade with things like Tourney Joust. You can gain a couple of extra points of value that way by bricking some of your opponent's cards. But Magni Division's just too much better than a lot of these shitty Nilfgaard bronzes to pass up most of the time. I would say it's a 4-star card, though probably not quite as good as Van Morlehem Hunter. Combat Engineer, I think, is a safe 1-star. Doesn't really do shit all. Alba Spearman. I've tried to play this card in Shoop. I usually phase it out. It is technically playable in Shoop. I think it's worse than Recruit by enough that I would dock it a star. It's like pretty hard to justify this, like even in a Shoop Paradia list. And like, I know Shoop Paradia is like the majority of Nilfgaard right now, but at some point it won't be. And it's like, I don't know. I really am not fond of the card at all. Nausicaa Brigade, I think, is in a pretty similar space. I've occasionally seen it, but it also just competes with things like Poison, which are just better. I'm tempted to give this one a 1-star. I feel like I've seen this one considerably less, and like I don't think I would ever consider it. I think it's a 1-star card. It's like so bad when it bricks, and like, yeah, it can get a 6, but enough of these other cards can get a 6 and like are generally better at doing it. And like have worse fail and have less bad fail conditions. Playing a 3 for 4 is miserable. Van Morlehem Servant. This card's really slow and really awkward. I'd give it a 1-star. Fangs of the Empire, very solid. Poison's like kind of ridiculous right now. I think I gave King Cobra like a 4-star. Fangs of the Empire goes into like a very strong poison deck. It goes into like every Nilfgaard. It's like considerably better than Hunter in my opinion, which I rated 4. I think it's fair to say it's a 5-star 4. It's like about the most you could expect a 4P card to be. Like 4 for 4 poison's kind of nuts right now. Ducal Guard works in Assimilate. Not a particularly flashy bronze, but it's got a role. I would say it's a viable card, but not like a card that's super meta relevant. I give it 3 stars. Infiltrator. Infiltrator's kind of a funny card. It's a card that's really easy to overvalue. The card actually like kind of blows to a point where I'm tempted to give it a 1-star. I see enough people play it that it's like maybe worth giving a 2-star. But there's like no one deck where this card like really makes sense in. It's kind of gotten crept out, so I'm just gonna say it. This card is bad, 1-star. Alchemist. Alchemist is really good in a deck where you want Alchemist. Those decks tend to be memes, but they're not that far-fetched, honestly. Like, there are ways you could give Alchemist very legitimate support. The card deserves at least 2 stars. Probably just 2 stars, honestly. It's got some potential, but it's not really a card that you'd play in any serious deck right now, or even like a deck that's like a little more fun, but like trying to be serious-ish. Deathwing Herbalist is an okay tech in Shoop. I tried it for a while and I mostly got frustrated with it. But when it works, it like really works. I don't know if it's a 2 or a 3. I would probably give it a 3. I think Deathwing Herbalist is a solid 3. Battle Prep. I end up cutting this from a lot of lists, but I also don't play Ardle. If you play Ardle, sometimes you need it. It's a viable choice to run as a tactic if you're trying to run like filler tactics, as opposed to like having utility for other tactics. I would give it 3 stars. And then Tourney Joust. Tourney Joust is very good. Tourney Joust makes it into almost every Nilfgaard deck. It counts as a tactic if you need it to count as a tactic. Because of Vigo, this card is very good. Like, Vigo is a crazy enough card that being able to run Tourney Joust, as opposed to, like, a lot of other Nilfgaard specials, which are way more miserable than Tourney Joust. Honestly, this is probably a 5, like, this might be a 5-star card, which is really silly, because the card does not look very exciting. But the card really enables, like, a lot of different... Like, for a 4P card, this is, like, a pretty ideal 4P card. Honestly, this card's, like... It's maybe a little unfair to say that. The card does trade down against some decks, where you're, like... I think it's probably only a 4-star card. It's definitely not as exciting as Fangs right now. Yeah, I'll give Joust a 4. Joust is not quite a Fangs. Ointment. Ointment has seen play before, just because it's like the 4P special you run if you run out of Tourney Jousts and Battle Preps. It's a lot harder to run out of Tourney Jousts and Battle Preps than it is to just run out of Tourney Jousts, though. Card's kind of shitty now. I'd probably give it a 1. I don't expect it to come back. Especially given that, like, Hyperthin is kind of dead because of Mata. And that was, like, where you saw it before, sometimes. So those are the 4s. Moving on to the 5s. I guess I should probably do this, just to make it a little more clear, and make sure that I remember. Duchess's Informant. It enables Assimilate. It's, like, not a terrible card. Vigo makes the card a lot better. But, like, it's really not an exciting card. It goes into an archetype. I guess it gets 3 stars for that. But, like, yeah, it's not a, like, value-wise, it's not a very good card, and it's a really unreliable card, too. It can brick if you're not careful. Emissary... Emissary's a fine card in Spies. Spies currently suck, but Spies could potentially not suck if CDPR decided to care about it again. Like, Spies has a start to it. You have cards that are aggressively done enough and, like, potentially spooky that you would consider playing Spies ever. It's just really, really half-baked. So, like, I give Emissary 2 stars, I think. Spotter's an easy 1 star. Nice try, Freddy. Hunting Pack. Hunting Pack is pretty good. It's a little more awkward than Imperial Brigade, but saving the P is usually worth it if you're playing, like, the status deck. It has a place. It's a solid thinning tool. I give it 4 stars. Like, being able to combo it with Vigo makes it much better than, like, most of the, like, 3-strength things that thin each other and, like, most of the other factions. Ardfane Crossbowmen. Full Soldiers isn't really a thing. The card's good enough to consider in Shoop. It's good enough to consider in just, like, more mid-rangey Nilfgaards. It's probably a 3-star card. It's not, like, an exciting card that you really have to auto-include. It's just, like, you can play it in the more soldiery variants of, like, the mid-range Nilfgaard decks. So, yeah. Menagerie Keeper also gets 3 stars from me. You play it in, like, the more tactic-heavy variants of, like, mid-range Nilfgaard. A lot of the Nilfgaard decks just feel very similar right now, just because poison is so strong. Like, the Nilfgaard poison tools are very strong, and just, like, their control cards, like Swears and Yen and whatnot. And then it kind of just feels like you end up filling. And this is an option to fill, if you're going the more tactic-y route. Slave Hunter. Slave Hunter is, like... I don't want to call Slave Hunter bad, but because, like, Assimilate requires Vigo, like, basically, Assimilate is just riding on Vigo's back, like, as an archetype. Like, Slave Hunter just feels so bad because it's just like, it can't go in that deck. There's no room for it. It's like not even a particularly efficient assimilate engine. I don't see it ever seeing play. I'm giving it a 1. Mangonel. So Mangonel, I said with Emissary that spies like could be good. The problem with Mangonel is Mangonel will never be good. Like, there's no way to like combo spies in such a way to where Mangonel is actually guaranteed to deal 5 to something. You have to like position spies in a specific way, and if Mangonel ever doesn't suck, then people will start playing around it, and it'll be at most a 3 deal 3, and it'll be a weird and situational enough 3 deal 3 in a deck that requires like a whole bunch of synergy, like spies for like Imperial Enforcers and whatever else. Like, you wouldn't play it in spies, so it gets a 1 star. Even though I gave Emissary a pity star. I will give Imperial Enforcers the pity star, however. Definitely a very potentially scary engine, even though it's a literal 3 for 5. In a world where most 3 for 5s have been, like, buffed. Morvan ability makes this card potentially quite a bit better. I'm almost tempted to give this card 3 stars, just because of how good it can be with Morvan. But, like, the other spy cards just, like, kind of weigh it down. Fire Scorpion, after being nerfed, like, twice in a row, is probably not a card that we'll see play again. I think it's been done in. I think it's safe to give it a 1 star. Thirsty Dame, not as good of an aristocrat as the Van Morlehem Hunter, but it still fills a tag that some Nilfgaard decks need, which has a lot of really shitty cards. So it is at least viable. It's really good off of the scenario. I give it 3 stars. Imperial Diviner, very good in Assimilate. Also just very solid card, solid Purify option. It's much less needed now that Cupbearer is in the game, and Cupbearer is nuts. But, like, the card is still pretty solid, and it's pretty common. I give it 4 stars. Slave Infantry got nerfed. I've seen a couple people try to play it in Shoop. It's not the worst thing ever. It can be really funny against Rot Tosser. It can be funny against, like, I don't know, some random shit. I'll give it 2 stars. It's not the bottom of the barrel, it's just pretty bad. Venendal Elite. This card used to be in, like, a lot of tactics decks. For whatever reason, it's, like, not nearly as common anymore, but you still can play it in Artle variants, and Artle variants are still viable. They've just been, like, a little more Radia-fied. Although, some of the Artles are not playing Radia. But, like, they've mostly just been, like... They've mostly just been slightly outclassed by Radia decks. But, like, this card could come back. This is, like, a 2 or a 3. It's probably fair to say it's a 3. I gave this card a 3. I think if you're playing this card, there's a decent chance you're playing this card. Although this card's, like, a little more shoopable, which is why it's a little better right now. But I think in a vacuum, this card's probably better. Although it does just get poisoned. That's, like, the problem with cards like these in this meta. But, like, even still, Nilfgaard has good Purify options, so that's not the end of the world. I'll give it 3. Alba Armored Cavalry just feels so much worse than Van Morlehem Hunter. You can copy it with Remen, but that's so rare that you'd actually want to do that. In every other way, this card is worse. It's a little bit more raw efficiency if you know you need a lock, because, like, 1 point for 1p is generally a good trade, although that's not even necessarily true when you're talking about 4 versus 5, because a lot of times 4s are meant to be mulligan fodder. I'd give the card 2 stars. It's considerable in, like, a Vadier deck, or, like, some other form of lock archetype, which is not, like, a total meme, but is not exactly exciting. It's not like a currently card. It's not currently a card you'd really play in anything ever. Standard Bearer is funny with Cahir. I don't really see Cahir ever being anything more than like a turbo meme. But like, I don't know. This card is weird. It's like not terrible against Northern Realms. But like, it's pretty bad. I mean, this is a 1-star card. Who am I kidding? I'm not gonna give it a pity star because Cahir exists in the game. That seems like a little much. Alba Pikeman is it's pretty much a shoop card, but it's a pretty good shoop card. I give it 3 stars. You can play it in soldiers too. Nausicaa Sergeant got nerfed. Nilfgaard generally doesn't like engines, especially engines that like don't come out at pretty good value. Like the strength of cards like Magni Division or like Alba Pikeman or even Master of Disguise is that even if they die right away, they trade pretty well. Nausicaa Sergeant does not trade pretty well, and like also is also just a sitting duck poison target, and is also just like 4 for 5. I don't really ever see this card coming back. I've seen it occasionally, but it's pretty bad. I'm giving it 1 star. I think they killed it really hard by raising it by a P, with no compromise. Courier is funny. Courier is funny enough that I'll give it 2 stars. You're not paying like too much for the ability. Although the ability normally does nothing, but like Courier Canta can be a pretty value combo, things like that. There are a lot of funny things you can do with Courier, even if it's like not amazing. So I guess it has potential TM. Rot Tosser's tough to evaluate. Rot Tosser goes in like the more heavy poison decks. I feel like it's usually not correct in the more shoopy lists, but it's got a place. It's definitely not as good as Fangs. It's like more awkward because it's like Rot Tosser is weird because it's like pretty easy to play around in terms of like stopping it from poisoning something really big. But it also just like helps you if you have like extra odds and ends worth of poisons. Like you can usually cash them in on something that's at least decent. A lot of like if people are not like thinking much about positioning, Rot Tosser can also fork. I'd say the card's like pretty good right now. It's probably worthy of a 4. It's around a decent amount. You also can throw it in Shoop. Vico Novice is a meme. I give it 1. It's like really awkward because you like draw the card you're trying to get rid of immediately again. Which is funny with like the new Ophiri Merchant card. I was screwing around by giving people crow's eyes for a while, but it's really clunky. It's so bad. Yeah. Ardfane Tortoise, very solid bronze. It's about the most you could ask for from a bronze in Nilfgaard. Like this card doesn't look that great because it's like a 7 for 5 that could end up being only a 6 for 5, and your opponent gets the choice on whether to activate the exposed condition. But there's a lot of random damage right now. Nilfgaard has a lot of good tall punish right now. So like the card can get extra value, and Nilfgaard is one of the factions that tends to struggle a little bit more with finding a lot of good bronzes. And like finding proactive cards in general that are good. So having a Tortoise to just slam down is really strong. This might be a 5-star card in the context of Nilfgaard. But I will be conservative and give it a 4. I think giving it a 4 is probably a little more fair. It's not like a super defining Nilfgaard card per se. Nilf Knight, playable and Shoop. Not exciting in shoot, but it's often exciting enough because it's a backup Ramen target. And being able to Ramen the tortoise is really good. Helps with proactivity a lot, especially in shoot. I give it 3 stars. Assassinate. Assassinate's a weird card. It's not as good as it was because tactics as a whole have gotten less essential than Nilfgaard. So like in a lot of decks, you would just rather play a Thunder, but it still has a little more surprise value now because people won't play around it like 100% of the time, and it's also just like sometimes just as good at like it can also just cash out for more than Thunder if there's like no Thunder target, or it can cash out for like at least as much at worst. Like there are still quite a few decks in which Assassination's pretty good. And because it's a spell, like, Nilfgaard kind of has a need for that sort of thing. So it's like at least a 3-star card. I would probably say it's like a little less good than Diplomacy, just because Diplo can be generally pretty proactive. And it's like a little more points, and it's just like a little more up Nilfgaard's alley. Also very good in Assimilate, which is like a solid, like, not like top of the line level of deck, but like it's up there. I would call Assimilate somewhat competitive right now. I think I'd give them both 4 stars. I think they're both relevant enough that they both deserve 4 stars. And I would give the Runestone 3 stars for only really being relevant in Assimilate. But you can play it. Or maybe that's not fair. Maybe the Runestone is also 4 stars. It does, like, in decks where you don't give a shit about this being a tactic, you prefer this to this. Yeah. Runestone's, like, decently common in Nilfgaard these days. I give Runestone a 4, too. So, moving on to 6s. Imperial Brigade. Worse because of Hunting Pack. But there are still some decks where you want an Imperial Brigade, where you don't want to rely on Hunting Pack. It's like more proactive as well, even in decks that do have statusing. I would probably give the card 3 stars. You could still play it. It's not the worst. It's like, it's honestly pretty bad because so many things are shoot now as well. So like the niche for both Brigade and Hunting Pack has gotten smaller, and then they also have to compete with Hunting Pack. Maybe it's really only a 2-star card, but I think it's better than a lot of cards I've called a 2-star card, so I would give it a 3. It's, like, viable. It's just not really relevant right now, which is how I define 3. Darelenge Soldier. I've seen people try to play this card and for a couple of different reasons. It's so fucking bad, though. I'm giving this a 1 star. Viper Witcher. Funny in Mill. It's a funny card. It's the ultimate counter to Hyper Thin that you don't really need. You definitely don't need it now. Like, it does kind of define Mill. I'll give it 2 stars in case they ever make Mill not stuck. They're not gonna do that. But fuck it. There are theoretically reasons you could play this card. Like, maybe as a backup if you're running, like, Cory or Kenta, or I don't fucking know. Remedy. Remedy is decent. It's a little less ubiquitous than Assassination and Diplo, but it's still pretty good. Because it's 6p, it's in that awkward spot where you often don't want to pay for it. But it has its place in Tactics decks sometimes, and Assimilate decks always. Give it 3. Rico. Rico is the first card I put into every single Nilfgaard deck where I just don't know what the fuck I want to play, but I know that I'm memeing. 1 star. Roderick. Roderick is a very big asset to Nilfgaard, even more so as a result of Mata, and like Yen, and just like that nonsense. Like Mata makes Yen better, which in turn like makes Roderick better because you're running Yen in your deck. Roderick is just like very efficient. You generally have pretty good thinning in Nilfgaard, and you just have like good access to your cards most of the time. So Roderick can just really fetch you what you want. And it just like provides a ton of consistency. I would give Roderick 5 stars. I think it is like a big incentive to play Nilfgaard, like kind of deceptively so. Vanhamar. Vanhamar is like a weird card. I mean, with Vincent being printed, I don't think you ever play Vanhamar in any deck, pretty much. It might be worth 2 stars. No, it's a 1-star card. Vanhamar gets a 1. Peter. I've seen a couple of people play Peter. I see quite a few people still consider Peter. There are so many better tall hate cards in Nilfgaard, and Nilfgaard just like doesn't need another one. I'm giving this card 2 stars. It's like not really a card you would ever want to run, but it's an artifact of some people to like run it anyway. Because the card used to be a little more popular and a little bit better. So moving on to 7s. Cantarella. Cantarella is funny with Courier. It's like funny in Spies and Assimilate, and it's especially funny in Spy Assimilate Regis. Because that was a thing that happened a while ago. Except it wasn't. That deck was not very good. But it was fun to play. I'd give it 2 stars. It's really not a good card. But it's a funny card. Courier Cant is not the worst, honestly. Albrick. Albrick is like a potential combo enabler. It's probably better than Fisher King. It can also work on a Fawn, but Morvren is just a way more efficient Fawn enabler. I give it 2 stars because I've seen it played before and like legitimate uses. Because like it can work with Calvite too, which is like sometimes fun for a combo deck. But it's really nothing special. Glynis is in a weird spot. Glynis is like not as easy to proc as Percival. Glynis gets like tall hated, but you are playing. If you're playing Glynis, you're probably playing Diviner, or at the very least, you're playing Cupbearer. So it's like it's a protectable card. Like trading a 7p card off for a tall removal is usually fine if that's what happens. The card's usually safe enough to get to at least decent heights. I would say Glynis is pretty good. I would give Glynis 4 stars. I feel like Glynis can go in quite a few different decks, even though the meta's not like super kind to Glynis right now. Vreemed. I think Vreemed has just been creeped out. Darylin Soldier's really clunky. It's like really bad. Vreemed is like the payoff of like the whole soldier archetype. So it feels a little better, and if they ever print like a better soldier that can work with Vreemed, the card will be good again. So I'll give it 2 stars because it has potential. Like the card could come back if the right card is printed. Palmerin and Milton. Oh wait, Milton's 8, right? They like buffed Palmerin, but only Palmerin for some reason. Even though they flat out refuse to like make Horst and Ewell different costs, which is really weird. I don't know why they do that. Like, Horst could totally be 7 and probably still wouldn't see any play. Anyways. Palmerin de Lonfall. So yeah, what was I saying about this card? 1 star. His cards have just gotten crept out. Kalok. Amazingly was in a challenger winning deck because it needed to be able to guarantee a Vigo, which meant it couldn't play Diviners, and it was deemed that Purify was just that important to play this card. It's so bad. It's never going to be seen again, 1 star. Like, times have changed. Yeah, that card is like, ugh. False Siri. False Siri's had a recent spike in popularity, partly because Usurper has spiked in popularity. Right now, there are a lot of decks that use their leaders to combo scenarios, which are just kind of busted. So Usurper can be used to like stop them from doing that. And then False Siri is like pretty good to just like come in and clean house and say, nope, you don't get your scenario. False Siri, even though the card is like worse than Nithrall, like I think I would rather play Nithrall even in Nilfgaard. Nilfgaard is the right faction to have a card like False Siri or Nithrall. And so like when I rated I rated Bomb Heaver 5 stars. And I think False Siri's like probably as good as Bomb Heaver. Like right now, False Siri's, it feels weird to rate False Siri 5 stars because it doesn't go into like every Nilfgaard. It feels like Bomb Heaver's like really good in like Northern Realms. And it's really when you can just like tutor it out with Kalanth. And that like makes the card way more reliable. I will give False Siri, I guess I'm giving False Siri 5 stars. Usurper's like pretty good right now. And False Siri is like a cornerstone of why that works. Ox. Ox is like kind of, Witchers have kind of been crept out, but they're still technically viable, I would say. In a deck that like wants locks for whatever reason, they're still fairly efficient locks. I usually end up playing them like whenever I'm building some sort of Vadier meme. They're like pretty bad though. Are they? I would give them 2 stars. I'll give Ox a 2 star. Cupbearer. Cupbearer's insane. Easy 5. Cynthia. Cynthia is no longer a total meme now that you can moda it. Card's like not really worth modding unless you can really guarantee that you're going to do that combo. And like even then, a lot of times it's just awkward for your opponent to receive a random 4p bronze that they can't plan for. Because like a lot of them are like conditional 6 or 4s or things like that. So like this card doesn't, the arithmetic on this card is really not that good. But you can play it earlier and it can be kind of like carryover because they're eventually going to receive the Guardian. The card's like viable. It's not an unplayable card by any means. I'd give it 3. Thanks entirely to Mata. This card like sucked before. Imperial Golem. Imperial Golem's been buffed down to 7. I mean, there wasn't really a reason to run it before. There's not really a reason to run it now. It's kind of funny in Mill. It can help shuffle. It can shuffle the opponent's deck, which is sometimes relevant when it comes to like Courier, Viper Witcher, like trying to banish their good cards and things like that. I don't know why I'm trying to make an argument for this card. I'll give it 2 stars. It actually plays for pretty decent vanilla value most of the time. And sometimes it just like has a niche. It can also potentially be a backup BDM, which is funny in like the Tibor meme decks. I don't know. It's not the worst. There are in fact worse cards, like Cadaver Meme. See, I've seen more people play Cadaver Meme than literally Imperial Golem. But this card is just worse. I'm giving it a 1 anyway. Cadaver Meme is just like, I want to play Scorch, but also I want to play a card that's like way worse than Scorch in like every way. It's so bad. It's like so awkward to make it work, and it's just like not worth building a unitless deck around it when you have other options. Treason. Treason's funny. There are legitimate reasons to play it, even though it's a card that like gets a lot of shit for like beating up on people that don't bother to play around it. Like, I would say the card is not absolutely terrible, personally. It's like not a high praise, though. I'd give it 2 stars. Eight. Oh, well. Okay. Starting off with Vigo. Vigo's great. Vigo is like the reason to play a non-shoot Nilfgaard. There's not much of a reason to play a non-shoot Nilfgaard right now, but it like carries Assimilate, and it like carries most like normal Nilfgaard decks. And it's like the reason why it's not like it's like really good in like the poison decks too. Like the heavy poisons that are trying to take advantage of their duplicate bronzes. And like Masquerade Ball and things like that. I'm giving Vigo 5 stars anyway. Vigo is just like the raw value on Vigo is insane if you have like any synergy with it at all. Menno's fallen a bit. Menno, like, as a result of a lot of Nilfgaards moving away from tactics, and like a lot of tactics being cheap and not super worth tutoring out, and Nilfgaard just getting better expensive cards. The card is still viable. It's just like not as exciting. It's still pretty good, honestly. It's probably worthy of 4 stars. Like, Menno's still pretty common. The card's like, there's nothing wrong with the card. Being able to guarantee bribery is really nice because bribery's gotten a lot better, especially in things like Shoop. Swears is very strong. Swears does better in decks that have like more control options. It can sometimes be a bit risky against factions that like don't play a lot of like small units, especially if they have like a TA on them. But like, it's Swears. Swears is just like really annoying and really good. I would probably give that was a notification. Yeah, Send Alive, thank you for the raid. Subathon time. Maybe reread the title. Yeah. Anyways, Swears is either a 4 or a 5. I think it's ubiquitous enough that I would probably give it a 5. It's one of the stronger control tools, and like it kind of warps how you play around Nilfgaard, and yet nonetheless it still manages to be good anyway. We've got Shaelmar. Yeah, Shaelmar like actually saw play for a while for some reason. I'm like kind of confused by that. It's not the worst thing ever. If there's enough Nilfgaard around, it can be like pretty good. But like Shaelmar saw play in like Ardal where you had like more ways to like actually take opponents' units. I'd give it 2 stars. You could play it. It might actually be kind of fun to play like Shaelmar Assimilate right now. It wouldn't necessarily be bad. Because like a lot of the scenarios, if you have a way to steal scenarios, can like they generate a lot of units. Maybe I'll give honestly, this card is like potential enough that I could see it being considered like Assimilate viable. I would maybe I'll give this card 3 stars. I also kind of want to mess around with Shaelmar after I'm done reviewing Nilfgaard. That sounds like a thing I could do. Although I'm probably going to be too tired. I might end the stream. Traherne. Traherne's a mill card. Traherne's pretty shitty even as a mill card. It's like probably worse than Viper Witcher, honestly. Like, it doesn't actually have the utility of banishing things. a lot of cards, like moving them to the graveyard, like they still kind of impact the game against some factions. It's so expensive for what it does. It's gotten like crept to hell. Like, even though it's a mill card, I end up sometimes cutting it for mill. I'd give it 1 star. It's like really inefficient at milling if your goal is actually to remove the deck as well, which is another problem. Helga's still good. Helga's less exciting now that there's a little less tactics shenaniganry, a little more Nilfgaard, just like tourney jousting it for free. But I give it 4 stars. It's Helga. Helga ain't bad. It's a spooky control card. Fringilla. 1 star. Yeah. Do I need to say more? That's what I thought. Felipe van Moorlehem. Moorlehem. Whatever the fuck. Yeah. You get it. This card's like decently efficient as an engine. Problem is just like this isn't usually what Nilfgaard is doing. I've seen a couple people play it, and it's done decently against me, but I also usually play random greedy shit. This card seems absolutely horrible against like more mid-rangey decks. I'll give it 2 stars just because it's an aristocrat and it's a 5/8 that can normally deal 2, which is like decent in a vacuum. Cards like Pavko are like pretty decent because you actually play them in decks that have other engines like at all. Milton, 1 star. If I rated Palmerin 1 star, I'm not going to rate Milton any differently. Isbell can combo with Mata, and like everyone was talking about Stregobor Mata. Isbell is like how you actually like abuse Mata. Isbell is so much better than Stregobor when it works. Like, to the point where I would rate the card 3 stars. Honestly, I don't think it's a totally unviable strategy to just, in a random Nilfgaard pile, throw in Isbell, throw in a Royal Decree, and just occasionally cheese a card and win the game for free. Like, the card is decent. It is really hard for a lot of factions to deal with a 10 on turn 1 on an empty board. Obviously, people can name the ways it's possible to do, but sometimes they just don't have them. Yeah. It's really not bad. As, like, funny as it is to say that. Seret, I rated the other Witcher 2 stars. I don't see a reason to rate Seret any differently. They're a pair. Dodric's just been crept out. Dodric's, like, cool. Dodric's kind of funny because it can fetch you things from, like, Yen and whatnot, too. But I just don't ever see it coming back. Like, there's so much Shoop everywhere right now, and yet nobody's playing Dodric. 1 star. We've got Rainfarn. Rainfarn's a spy card. But Rainfarn's a shitty enough spy card, especially in this meta, that I would give Rainfarn 1 star. Asir. Asir is, like, pretty interesting right now. They removed Doomed from Shoop. So if you're ever playing, like, Shoop, like, the one that actually has Shoop in it, running Asir is pretty good. There are a lot of ways to fetch it back, and when that works, that's a ton of value. Like, you're basically, like, yeah. It's a little hard to explain the exact math on that, but, like, connecting an Asir is worth, like, a lot. It's, like, very good. Has, like, other random utilities as well. Can potentially be nice with Menno. Bribery's good enough that, like, Asir for 2 briberies is not, like, the worst idea. I don't think it's, like, common enough to be, like, a 4-star card necessarily. It's at least a 3. I would probably give it a 4 right now. It's like pretty relevant right now. It's like decently popular. I think it's not a bad way to build Radia. Letho. Letho's another Witcher, 2 stars. War Council, I see like decently often. The card just seems kind of clunky to me. There are like so many situational cards in Nilfgaard that it just like a card like this, you're paying a lot for it, by the way. Like you're paying a lot for like a much clunkier like Royal Decree. And it's like at that point, maybe just pay for Royal Decree if you really care that much. The card's viable. It's not like bad, but it just feels kind of RNG, and like it lets you down a lot. I'd give it 3. Let's see how many. I wasn't logging as well, so let me double check my current count. So 5, 2, 2, 3, 12, 14. So 11. Okay, so I rated up to a seer. So I need a 2 and a 3. Bribery. Bribery. I never thought I would say this. Bribery is actually a 5-star card. Bribery is currently insane. I feel so dirty saying that. Oh, God. Okay, well, there you go. It is. Like, in Shoop in particular, bribery is just so dirty. Like, against every other Shoop deck, you just get another Radia if you're, like, good enough at the game. Mata is always a good bribery, and it's in a very large number of decks. And, like, decks are just playing more good, strong cards in general that are worth stealing. Like, the meta right now has a lot of great bribery targets. Yeah. Fithian. Fithian is awkward. It gets purified. Nilfgaard at least has, like, some cards that you would want to purify because most Nilfgaard lists are playing poisons. So Fithian getting purified is not too much of a danger. It can get Vincented, and there's enough Nilfgaard that makes playing, like, Fithian and Cave Troll spooky. But Fithian, like, Fithian's definitely the better of the two. Can also proc Assimilate. The card's seen a decent amount still. It's pretty good in, like, formation decks that are trying to, like, abuse, like, Stefan, Damien, whatever nonsense. There are, like, ways you can make this card pretty good. It's a 3 or a 4. I'll give it a 4. I feel like it's one of the better defenders right now. Vrygaf has been crept out. Honestly, the card's, like, weak enough that let's say create some absolutely insane deploy. This is like 1 star. I'm giving it a safe 1 star. I don't think it's ever coming back without a buff. Shylard. Shylard's an aristocrat, which has brought a little life into this card that I would previously consider to just be power crept out. It also can kind of be like carryover. It can hit things like Radia a lot in this meta. The card's viable. It's like a little weird, a little underwhelming at times. But I think it's a solid 3-star card. A Fawn. A Fawn is the reason you would play Formation. Formation is currently one of the best abilities. Like, it defines Formation. Turns an 8-point leader into a 13-point leader for not too much cost. 5 stars, I guess. It's like a little weird to rate it because it's basically attached to the leader ability. But, like, the card's good. It's good enough to... A Fawn is, like, aggressively done enough that if Imperial Formation didn't exist, playing Albrecht and a Fawn would not be crazy. Which is insane, because Albrecht kind of sucks. Albrecht's kind of, like, a little bit bunka. I gave it 2 stars, but, like, just barely. Zarthisius. Zarthisius is a lot of raw value. With all of the other cards that like Nilfgaard's gotten to toy around with, and also a lot of Nilfgaard's being a little more Roddy focused and a little less like thinning heavily focused. I haven't seen much Zarth this season, but I think if you're building like a non-Radia list, Zarth is pretty good. You can still have a lot of control over it and can still do pretty nutty things if you're good at the game. So I would rate the card 3 stars. It's definitely still playable. Vilgefortz. Vilgefortz is pretty good. In terms of raw value, Vilgefortz can be like... Vilgefortz is not great, but it can also like potentially pull a good card and just like really screw over your opponent by just like denying them cards while it pulls them out. It has a little bit of flexibility with the ranged ability as well, although it's pretty rare that you use it. It can be funny on like a cow carcass. Reminds you a little bit of Beta Gwent. Except you don't get to play the card, it just summons it, which is so much worse. But nonetheless, Vilgefortz is like pretty good right now. You see it a decent amount. It'd be a lot better in a lot of other factions because Nilfgaard has so many other ways to deal with tall cards. But it's one of the faster, like more immediate ways, and sometimes having stuff like that can be pretty valuable. I'd give it 4 stars. You see it around. It's like pretty good. Coherent. I saw one guy playing Coherent Yen with Calvite and literally just last play comboing the 2 cards after setting them on top of the deck with Albric. It was really funny. It's so bad, though. I don't think that'll ever be a real thing. I'll give it 1 star. I tried playing it. It was so miserable. Tibor. Hyperthin could come back. Mill could come back, even though it would be much harder than Hyperthin coming back. Tibor enables some decks. Tibor's like pretty cool as well. The card's not terrible raw value. I would give the card 2 stars just because there's not really a reason to play it right now, especially with all the tall hate. Yenvo. Yenvo's really good. Is it like 5-star good? It's better than Vilgefortz. It's more ubiquitous than Vilgefortz. Probably by enough that, yeah, it's like 5-star good. There are a lot of ways to play the card you get with it now, even if you play Yenvo on round 3. And in Radia Mirrors, the card's insane. It's like the reason why It's the reason why Nilfgaard is like very commonly the like Shoop Radia faction, as opposed to like just it being NR. Because like even though NR has like a more insane set of like vanilla golds that play to like a Shoop style of gameplay better, Nilfgaard can like gain a ton of extra value in Shoop Mirrors. Thanks to like Yenvo. So moving on to 10s. We've got Vivian. This card is kind of funny if you combo it on Caretaker. It's like not really good though. There's not really a reason to play it. I would probably give this card 1 star. It's just gotten crept out so hard. It's like so hard to find targets for this that are actually desirable. Leo Bonhart is a better Geralt, which I rated 2 stars, but I don't think Nilfgaard would be the faction to play Geralt in this day and age. They have so many ways to deal with tall things that can be so good. Like after the nerf on Leo from 8 to 9, and Leo was like already a little iffy at 8, I think Leo is solidly a 1-star card. I think Leo's like bad. Leo's not like no, Leo's bad. Yeah, I'm sticking to my gun. 1 star. Ramon is pretty good. You can play it in Shoop. You can play it in mid-range. There are a lot of soldiers that are just solid to copy. Making a bunch of armor is really good against Northern Realms, and Northern Realms is like everywhere. I give Remen 4 stars. Joachim's an aristocrat. A lot of people have tried to play this card because Joachim's an aristocrat. The card is so bad that I'm giving it 1 star anyway. You're welcome. Oh fuck, I accidentally hit a button in Excel I didn't mean to. Yeah. Letho. Letho's funny. Letho can be pretty good. There are pretty good Letho targets. One sitting right here. I'd give it 2 stars. It's like situational enough that you have to have enough cards you want a Letho, and then like it sometimes still bricks. But like when it works, it's pretty good. You like could build a deck where Letho is good. I wouldn't really call the card viable right now, but it's not like the worst. Stefan on the other hand is pretty good. In formation, you can buff it. Bribery is insane, so getting a second bribery is like always an easy Stefan. It's like guaranteed to be pretty solid. The card's like worth protecting. Like Fithian only has to like survive for 1 turn to just like slam a Stefan, and then Fithian's basically just gotten his value worth and more as a defender. I would give Stefan like tactics are a little less ubiquitous, but there are a lot of archetypes where you can play a Stefan. You don't need like many tactics, you just need good ones. I'd be tempted to give Stefan a 4, but I don't think it's quite as good as like Stefan like requires a little more support. I'd give Stefan a 3. Just because so many of the good decks right now are kind of mid-rangey and damage things, and it's a little risky to be greedy. But in the right deck, Stefan can find good value. Vadier. I'll give Vadier a pity 2 stars. The card can be really good in a meta where you can actually protect it with a defender reliably. That's probably never going to happen. I'm giving this card 1 star. Who am I fucking kidding? Damien. If I gave Stefan a 3, I think I'd give Damien a 3. I think they're around the same tier. I don't think either of them are super required in formation. They will make your Nilfgaard matchup kind of painful because of Yenvo and things like that. But they're solid cards that you can run in formation decks. Or in other decks. A lot of times they're just that much value. Vincent's a weird card. It gets overrated a lot, but it's also just like it also gets played around like super hard. But the card really is that good. It's like so hard to find aristocrats that are good. And Vincent can just randomly find value on like literally anything, and it's just like already very good. And it's like, I don't know. Vincent's weird. I think Vincent's common enough and like generally strong enough that I would give the card 4 stars. Like, it's just impossible to completely play around Vincent. There's so many ways that Vincent can just get freebies. Like, Nilfgaard's pretty good at getting lasse against stuff like Syndicate, where, like, just having Vincent in your deck, like, totally ruins their Savola, which is normally their finisher. Masquerade Ball. Masquerade Ball is, like, pretty good. I feel like probably every single scenario is at least a 4 right now, which is really silly. I don't think Masquerade Ball is as good as Haunt. Haunt is a little more practical to combo than Masquerade Ball, although maybe that, like, Masquerade Ball you can combo more reliably, but I think you have to play a worse leader to do it. Maybe that's not true with all the poison cards in that deck. I'd give Masquerade Ball 4 stars just because Nilfgaard builds so well to Shoop. And it's like, Shoop doesn't really play with Masquerade Ball. It doesn't really work very well from my experience. but it's still solid. It's in a lot of Nilfgaard decks. A lot of the Nilfgaard decks with duplicates really love Masquerade Ball. So yeah, that's Nilfgaard. Yeah. Hopefully that went a little faster, because not as tired or hungover or whatever. But yeah. Peace.